Hi, and welcome to this mini course on AI engineering. In this mini course, you will learn the basic principles of AI engineering by using ChatTPT to automatically write blog articles on any news topic. I will show you some cool tricks along the way, but rest assured, you don't need to be an expert in coding or anything else to follow along. This is a beginner-friendly tutorial, and we will have ample explanation for everything we do along the way. So let's get started. To follow along with this tutorial, you'll need a code editor. I recommend using Visual Studio Code, but you can also use any other editor that you like. If you don't have a code editor installed, you can download Visual Studio Code from here. You'll also need to have Python installed on your computer. If you don't have Python installed, you can download it from here. And if at any point during the installation it asks you if you want to add Python to your path, then make sure to check yes. The last thing we'll need is a ChatTPT account. If this is your first time using it, don't worry, you will get a bunch of free credits after signing up for your first account, so you should be able to follow along without having to pay any money. So go to platform.openai.com, you don't have to add the rest here. And then if you don't have an account, just sign up with your Google account. Obviously the letters won't show up for you in Korean, but just ignore this. This just says log in with Google. Then it's going to ask you something simple like to fill in your birthday or whatever, and ta-da, you have an account. Okay, so I'm logged in my account now. I'm going to go to the dashboard, and then here in the left sidebar you will find this menu API keys, so go ahead and click on that. Now if this is a new account that you just made, it's probably going to show you this verify your phone number to create an API key, so just press start verification. So the reason they do this is to prevent bots from creating loads of free accounts and abusing their system. Just give them a phone number, they send you a verification code to enter. You also get a bunch of free credits from them, so you can follow along with this tutorial for free. So it's a win-win. Then after you have verified your phone number, click create new secret key here. Now in this next window, you can basically just leave everything as is. You don't need to give it a name or select a project. You may not have any project set up in your account. It doesn't really matter. You can do these things if you want to, but I'll just create a nameless general key for now by simply accepting everything as is and clicking the create secret key button. Okay, you will now see your new API key that you've just generated. Make sure you press this copy button here so it is copied to your clipboard. Now it may be a good idea to save this key somewhere safe, maybe like a password manager, because you're not going to be able to see this key again. You can always just generate an extra new key though if you lose it, so it's also not the end of the world. Make sure though that you never share your key with anyone, as anyone with your key can use your credits on your behalf. Okay, so I'm going to press done here. Now of course I just showed this key on the video and it didn't show the entire key, but don't worry about it. I'm just going to revoke this key so it doesn't exist anymore, so no worries. So now that we have our API key, we can start on our automatic blog writing journey. So let's first take a brief test run of how ChatGPT works when using the API with Python. After this, it will be a lot easier to create our automated blog writing script because we'll have the basic knowledge that we need. First of all, create a folder for your project. I named it Intro to AI. So I have my folder here, Intro to AI, and then you can just right click here and open with code, and it will open up the code editor. Or you can also just open up VS Code and then open folder and navigate to the folder. Same thing. So the first thing we'll need to do is save our API key somewhere in this project, right? But we don't want to hard code this API key into our scripts, as that would be a security risk. Instead, we'll save it in a separate file and read the key from the file when we need it. This way we can also easily share our code without sharing our API key. So create a new file by right-clicking this browser's sidebar and just going to new file. And now name it .env. So it's only an extension, but there's no file name. It's only .env. And now we're just going to go OpenAI API key. So this is the name of the variable. Then we have this equal sign. Make sure you don't use any spaces or quotation marks. And then you just paste your key in here. Just make sure you do it exactly like this. And then just save this file and close it. Now, if you ever share your code later on, just make sure you exclude this .env file from the shared code and you're good. The next thing that we will need to do is install 2 libraries for Python. So open a terminal in VS Code by clicking either a terminal here and new terminal, or you can use this shortcut that you can see right here. For me, it also works without the shift. Just pressing Ctrl and tilde will open a terminal for me just fine. Now we're going to type pip, which is the package manager that comes with Python. We're going to install OpenAI, and I'm going to add -- upgrade. So that means that if this is already installed on your computer, it's just going to upgrade it to the newest version just to be safe. Then press enter and let that install. Okay, so in my case, it just says requirement already satisfied because it's already installed, but that's also fine. fine, but that just installs the OpenAI Python library, and this library will allow us to easily interact with the ChatGPT API. Now the next library that we will need is called python.env. So I'm going to go for pip install python.env. And this library will allow us to read the API key from the .env file that we created. So go ahead and press enter to install that. Okay, so now that we have both of these installed, I'm just going to hide this console window and we're going to create a new file again. I'll call this first request.py. And the first thing we're going to do in here is put in our imports in this Python script. So we have import OS, the operating system, and this library will allow us to read the API key from the env file used in combination with the load.env import. The OpenAI import is the library that we installed earlier that will allow us to interact with the ChatGPT API. Oh, and a small tip, if you have this kind of import problem here, it shows red lines, you likely have multiple versions of Python. So just make sure you click down here and then select the correct version that has OpenAI installed inside of it. In my case, it's installed in 3.10, but you can install it in whatever version. If you had no import problems, don't worry about this. You don't have to change it. Okay, so the next step is to load up our API key and then set up the OpenAI object. So I'm going to run load.env. And calling this function is going to read the .env file from our API key. And it's basically going to make it so that the OS library now has access to these variables by setting them as environment variables. We then create a client object using the OpenAI class that we imported. And we're going to pass in an argument, API key, which is equal to os.getEnv with this value passed in. So the operating system library has a function to get an environment variable, and we need to pass in the exact same name. So make sure this matches exactly with the name you used for the key inside your .env file, because otherwise this will not work. So this OpenAI object, which we named client, now has access to our API key so that we can make requests using this client. Now don't worry too much about this if it seems confusing. This is actually probably one of the hardest parts of this tutorial, and it's just sort of boilerplate setup code. So now that we have a client to interact with ChatGPT, let's write some instructions that we want to give to ChatGPT. So I'm going to go below here and I'm going to add this. So I created a variable duck instructions and use the equals operator to assign it to a multi-line string. Now a multi-line string just means that it can span multiple lines and it is enclosed by triple quotes. So this means a start and this indicates the ending to Python. The string just contains instructions for ChatGPT to follow. So we're asking ChatGPT to pretend it's a duck and we're going to ask it to answer the question, what is the fastest animal on Earth? But we're also asking it to not forget to quack every few words. Okay, so we have instructions. Now let's continue below. And now we're going to make a call to ChatGPT using our client object. So I'll just paste it in here. There we go. First of all, we print a message to the terminal window. And it's just going to say, asking duck GPT. You can do this by just calling the print function and passing in a string value, which is enclosed by these double quotes. Then we call the client.chat.completions.create function. This function will send a message to ChatGPT enclosed in these braces here and then receive a response back in return. So we pass in two arguments to this function. The first argument is model GPT-4o. This tells ChatGPT which model to use. Obviously, we're using the GPT-4o model, which is the latest version of ChatGPT at the time of writing this tutorial. The second argument is the messages here, and this is a list of messages that we're sending to ChatGPT. In this case, our list, indicated by these square braces, contains only one entry, which is a dictionary with two keys, role, which is set to user, and then we have content, which is set to duck instructions, so it's going to contain this string here. So as the role is set to user, we're going to be just pretending that this is the question from the user itself and just send it to ChatGPT as such to answer. Now this call is going to obviously return a response, which is going to be saved in the variable duck response. Now the response that ChatGPT is going to send us here, saved in this variable, is going to be an object with a lot of information and not just the answer to our question. And we can access the answer by using the following code. Now this is quite long and I'm not sure why the object is so complex, but it is what it is. Please don't worry too much about the exact structure here, but the answer is located in the response objects choices list the first item, so that's index 0. Then inside of that is a message key, and then that message has a key called content, and that's where the actual answer from ChatGPT is. So it means that after running this line, the actual content of the response is going to be saved in a variable named quack talk. Finally, of course, we want to see the answer, so I'm going to add a print statement again. But this time we're using an F string, you can see, because it's prefixed by this F sign here. And an F string is a string that will allow you to insert variables by using these curly braces here. So we just have the string in orange here, and then here we insert the variable quack talk inside of the string, so this is going to get printed to the console. Okay, so that's everything. We have our imports, we load the API key, instructions, we ask ChatGPT, we index into the answer, which is in a little bit of a weird place, but it is what it is, and then we print the answer to the console. So go ahead and save this file, and if you look up here in the top right corner, you'll have this handy Run Python file button. So go ahead and click that, and let's see what happens. So it's going to run our file, and we're going to see asking DuckGPT. The duck says, quack quack, the quack fastest animal on earth. Quack is the peregrine falcon. It can quack reach speeds of over 240 quack miles per hour. That's really fast. Okay, so this bird basically has the same diving speed of a Bugatti. The more you know. Well, anyway, that's it. You just made your first request to ChatGPT using Python. You've just successfully completed the hardest part of this tutorial, so give yourself a pat on the back. So now that you have a basic understanding of how to call ChatGPT, all we need to do is take this knowledge and apply it to writing blog articles instead. Of course, we'll take this to the next level and add some new stuff, but the basic idea will be exactly the same. So I'm going to close this file for now, and we're going to get started on our article generator. The first thing we'll need is some content to write an article on. For this example, I'm going to be using a quarterly report for NVIDIA. You can find it over here. I'm very sorry the link is so long. Here, I'll go to a tiny URL for you, shortened URL. Okay, now you can choose. You can either type this horribly long address, or you can just type this very short address here. Or you can go to the written version of this tutorial and you can just click the link. If you're really lazy, that will take you directly to the article as well. Does this actually work? I've never actually tried making one of these. Yes, it works. There you go. So we're going to keep it simple for now. This is a very long report on all the achievements by NVIDIA in this particular quarter. And for now, we're just going to keep more complex things like automated web scraping out of the loop. I'm just simply going to click on the page. I'm going to press Ctrl A to select all of the text. Then I'm going to press Ctrl C to copy all of the text. Okay, it's all copied now. I'm going to go back to my code editor. I'm going to create a new file, and I'll just call it content.txt. And in here, I'm going to press Ctrl V to paste everything in here. So there will be a very large amount of text in this file now, a very, very large amount of text, which is fine. Go ahead and save this and close this, and we now have the data in content.txt. You can, of course, use a different source material if you like, but I'll use this quarterly report as a good example. Next up, create a new file in your project folder called articlegenerator.py. And here is where we'll make the magic happen. So inside of this new script, let's start with our imports, just like we did last time. Now you'll notice that these are not all the same. I added two new imports. The first is UUID, which is a library that will allow us to generate a unique identifier, which we'll explain in a moment. The second one is the requests library, which will allow us to make HTTP requests to the internet. We will explain this later on when we use it to download an image. Also, I'm pretty sure requests comes pre-installed somehow, but if for some reason it's not working, you can always run pip install requests, and then that will fix it for you if the import is not working for some reason. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is load up our API key and set up the client object just like we did last time. It's exactly the same. The first method loads the keys from the file into the environment variables, and after that the os.getEnv call can read it from memory and pass it into our new client object. I added a new line here where we call Python's UUID library, which has the UUID4 function, which simply generates a unique code. So it's random, different each time, and it will look roughly something like this. Now we're going to save this unique identifier, and this will be different every time we run this script, inside of this unique ID variable for now, so that we can use this later when we want to save our article and make sure that it has a unique name. So we're just going to use this code to make sure that we don't overwrite any of our previous articles that may accidentally have the same name. Now the next thing that we will have to do is actually read the text that is inside of our content.txt file, because we need the text in here and we need to send it to ChatGPT, right? So we're going to read the content of content.txt inside of this script. Let me paste it in here. So the first thing I do is simply print a message to the terminal window, and it will just say reading content from content.txt. This is just to keep ourselves updated in the terminal on what is happening and which step our script is currently on, so that we can keep up with the progress. Then we're going to open the content.txt file in R or read mode, because we want to read the content, and we specify the encoding as UTF-8. UTF-8 is the most used encoding, and it will just ensure that these special characters get read correctly, because otherwise we'll have some of those weird broken characters and question marks that maybe you'll see sometime. You will notice the with open part. Without going into the specific details about this, it basically means that the file is open during all of the indented code that follows. And then afterwards, when this indentation ends and we go back here again, it will automatically close this file for us again. So this way we can keep the file open during this code, and we don't have to worry or try to remember to close it again, because it's handled for us automatically. The as file part simply means that we can refer to the file object using the name file in the indented code block that follows, because again the file is open during this indented code. So here you can see we're using file to refer to it. Now you can probably guess what this next line does, right? We call file.read to read the content, and this will read all the content of this text file into a variable text content. Finally, we're going to print a message to the terminal window using one of those f strings again, so we can insert a variable. We're saying that the content was read successfully, and then we're also going to print the length of the content text file in characters. So the variable we inserted inside of this f string is len with text content passed in. So len is a function that will return the length of the string that is passed into it. In this case, the text content, which is all the content of this file. So it will just count the number of characters in text content and insert that number here. Okay, so now that we have our basics set up and we have also read our source material into a variable, it's time to move on to the next step, which is to actually write a blog article. So of course we need to start with the instructions for ChatGPT, just like we did with our doc example last time. So we're going to put a new multi-line string here, and this one is going to be a bit longer because we need very specific instructions. So it starts here. The old code is still here, don't worry. Now note that we have a multi-line string variable again. It indicates the start here and it ends all the way down here. But this time it's also preceded by an f, so it sort of combines the two. It makes it into a multi-line f string, and this allows us to again insert variables inside of the curly braces. Now we basically just give instructions to write a blog article. As ChatGPT doesn't really count, I ask for about 2000 characters, which works really reasonably well, and it gives me articles that are about 3500 characters on average, which is a pretty good size for me. We ask for a professional yet engaging tone, and I'm also going to ask it not to have any introductory statements. So sometimes ChatGPT will answer, sure, I can help you with this, here's your answer, and then the actual answer. And then we would have to remove that introductory sentence from our blog article. So we're just going to ask it not to do that. Now we're also asking for formatting in Markdown. In case you're not familiar with Markdown or you need a short refresher, here is going to be Markdown in 60 seconds. So I'm going to create a new file, test.md. You don't have to create this, but you can if you feel like following along. So this is the Markdown file. Now if I press this preview button here, it's going to add the actual live preview of the Markdown. So Markdown is a super simple way to add formatting to your text without needing to know any fancy coding. Imagine you're writing a plain text document, but you want to add some headings, lists, or even images. With Markdown, you can do all of these things with just a few special characters. For example, if you want to make a heading, you just put one or more hash signs in front of it, and I'm going to say heading. So a single hash sign here is a large heading. If I put a second one here, you can see, oh, that's a typo. You can see the heading got smaller, and if I put 3 in front of there, it gets even smaller. You get the idea. So I'll set it back to 2. Okay, so now maybe I want to make a list. So I'm just going to use either a star or a dash, whichever you prefer. And then we have a list item. We can have another one. We can have a third one. And you can see this shows up nicely with these bullet points here. Say we want to have a link. I can say I want the link text to be click here, and the website we're going to go to is google.com. Yes, sure, fine. So now you'll see the link displays click here, but if we actually click it, and it opened up in my other monitor, but we have google.com here. So yeah, Markdown is just a super easy to learn sort of a formatting thing, and it makes your text look great with minimal effort. In fact, there is a written version of this tutorial, which you may be reading right now. I formatted it using Markdown. It's all written in Markdown. So I'm going to just close this test file, But by using ChatTPT to use Markdown here, it can easily provide nice formatting in the blog article that it writes for us, so that we don't have to receive this large text and then put in lots of effort to make it look decent. And also the Markdown format is used in many places, so it's very easy to convert it to website usage and post it on our blog or whatever. Now in the final part of the instructions, we ask ChatGPT to insert a placeholder for an image, and we're asking it to insert it using this syntax here. So somewhere at an appropriate location inside of our article, it's going to just insert this code, if you will. Now this is just the text that shows up if you hover over the image, so it could be like a cute cat in space or whatever is the text version of what the image shows. And this is the actual link to the image itself. So if this were an MD file, just like this test.md, I guess I can just quickly show you, that's easier. So we have test.md file here. I'm going to insert image. Okay, now we can see, of course, that this image is broken. But if I have this output to .jpg, this strawberry picture here, of course this is called JPEG, so I have to change it to JPEG. And now if I rename this picture to image, and then I think I have to reopen the preview because it doesn't pick up on changes like these. But if I open it again, you can see here is our strawberry image because it's trying to find an image.jpg in the same folder. It says, okay, it's there, so I'll insert it, boom. So the idea here is that we ask ChatGPT to insert this somewhere, then we have our article, and then later if we add an image and we just give it this name, it will automatically be inserted into our article in the location that ChatGPT chose for us. Cool, right? Now after that, we give it the text, and we're just going to put in all of the text content, which is of course massively long, and then we just end by saying blog article : So why do we do this? Well, just remember that ChatGPT is like a chat completion kind of thing. So we send it a very clear hint now that the next thing that's supposed to come after this is the blog article itself. It would be very weird if it says blog article : to just have any kind of introduction or something. That would be out of place, right? So this is just another trick I use to avoid getting answers like, sure, here's your blog article, because it just clearly states the blog article starts here immediately. Okay, so those are our instructions for ChatGPT saved in the variable write blog article instructions. Now we can continue. Let's go down and call ChatGPT with these instructions and get our actual blog article. Now you'll notice that this is the same syntax we used for our doc.gpt example before. The only thing we did is switch out the doc instructions with more elaborate blog article instructions. And I added the print statement again for clarity in the console. The response is going to be saved in article response. Now remember that the response object that we get from ChatGPT is quite complex and contains a lot of information. So we want to extract the actual textual response like we did with our doc example before. So I'm going to do that weird thing again where we do blog article equals article response, the choices key, the first item in this list, the message, and then the content for that message. This is not super important or likely to get triggered, but if not blog article, just tests if there is actually a value in this variable. And if for some reason there is no variable, we didn't receive a response, then we're just going to print that something went wrong, please try again, and we're going to just exit, which just stops all the code. Now, if it's not empty, so there actually is a response in here, the code will just ignore this and continue, and we'll print blog article generated. And we're going to use the length thing again to show the length of our blog article in the console. So now this will actually contain the real blog article that ChatGPT wrote for us in Markdown format itself. Of course, I'd like to save it to a file just like this test.md so we can actually, have a look at our article and actually have it saved, obviously. Now, I'd like to not just save all the articles in here because you can see this is already kind of becoming a mess. If we save 20 different articles in here, it's going to be a huge mess. So I'd like to save it inside of a folder named output. So I want a new folder output here. You don't have to create it. And then inside of that output folder, I would like to have a folder with a unique name for the project. So it would be something like we have a folder output, and then inside we have a folder article name here. Then we have the unique code that we generated using the UUID library. So we can use that to make sure the name is absolutely unique. And then inside of there, of course, we're going to have the article.md file where we'll actually save the Markdown article just like this test file did. So the first thing I want to get, output is sort of static, that will always be the same, but the article name is going to be different for every article we write. So I'm first going to get the article name here part by simply starting the code like this. Project name equals blog article. And then we're going to use this slice operator to get the first 25 characters of the blog article variable. So it will start by default at the beginning, which is indicated by there not being anything here. And then this colon says we're now switching to the end, which is at 25 characters. So we'll just cut off some characters from the beginning as a project name. Okay, so, but that's only this part. Now we need to generate the full name here for where we want to save our file. the full path to the output folder. So I'm just going to go output folder equals. Now we're going to just reuse the f string trick here. We just say output slash, then we insert the project name here, which is whatever we cut from there. Then we have a slash here, a dash here, and then we just insert the unique ID after that. So now we have basically this structure in string format in here. Now there's one problem. If these directories do not exist, then the script is going to crash out. Luckily, the OS library, which we imported up top and have been using here, has a lot more tricks up its sleeve, and one of them is a good solution for the problem we have here. So I'm just going to paste this in here. Now this code is extremely readable and does exactly what it says in the box. If not os.path.exists for the output folder, so if path does not exist, then it's just going to call os.makeDirectories for the output folder. So it's just going to create whatever folders it needs to make sure that this output path actually exists. Okay, so I'm just going to remove this comment here because we're done with that explanation. Notice though that this /article part, we'll have to add that later, but that's fine. We only saved the output folder part. Okay, get rid of that. So now all we've done basically is we know exactly where we want to save our article, and we know that the folders exist so that we can actually save it. Now let's really save the article to a file. And this is going to be remarkably similar to how we read the other file earlier, except this time we're going to be writing instead of reading, of course. So I'll just put it in here. First of all, we need the save location for the actual blog article. So that's going to be the output folder part. But again, like I just said, we need to attach article.md as that is the file we want to place in the folder now. Then we use the with open syntax again, just like last time, to open the file at the location that we specified here. Now you may say this file doesn't exist, and you're correct, but in this case it's going to create the file if it doesn't exist. So we're opening it in W in write mode this time. Again, we set the encoding to UTF-8. Unless you have a good reason to do otherwise, or you have knowledge to do otherwise, generally stick with UTF-8 as your best guess for reading or writing any text files where you don't know the encoding. It's usually just the safest bet. And again, we refer to it as file. Then we're going to call file.write, passing in the blog article. And now I'm just going to print a message to the console, article saved as, and I'm just going to print the directory where the article was saved. Okay, so the hardest part is actually behind us. At this point, you can give it a test run and it will totally work. You will use about $0.2 or 20 cents for this to run if you're using the same absolutely massive text input that I am. Now, this may seem expensive, 20 cents, but for a 130,000 character input, writing a professional blog article of 3,500 characters in mere seconds for 20 cents, I mean, it's a steal. That being said, if you want to wait with the test until we actually finish the whole script, that's also fine. You can look along on my screen. So I'll go ahead and give this a test run now, and let's see what happens. Content read successfully, generating blog article. Okay, blog article generated. Oh, we got a longer one this time, 4,700 characters. Saved as, and it's saved in here. Okay, so let's see. We can see that an output folder has been generated. Now the name is going to be very long, but that's fine for now. This is the folder name or whatever. And if we open it, we have our article. Now, just like before, we can press this magnifying glass and we'll see a preview of the real article. I'm just going to drag it over here to make it bigger. And we can see, of course, there's a broken image link here. That makes sense because we haven't put the image in here. We'll take care of that later. But just ignoring that, this is a really impressive, awesome article. It has good formatting. It has lists. It uses bolding. It uses headers. Oh, I just double clicked it to go to the source. So yeah, this is very good. It did a really awesome job, and all of that in like a couple of seconds. If you think about it, it's insane, right? So that was just a first test run. I'll close this for now because we have work to do. So let's continue on our code. Now the last thing here we need is the image. So I'm sure you've all tried one of those AI image generators by now. You give it an input prompt of what you want to see. Like you say, I want to see an adorable strawberry shark with tiny arms and legs in space. So you give it that description and then it gives you back an image, and it will look, I don't know, it will look something like this. So it just takes whatever description you give it, even if it's totally ridiculous, and it will actually generate a plausible image for that description. Now, since we want to have a fitting image for our blog article, which does not generally involve strawberry sharks in space with tiny arms and legs, cute as he might be, sorry little guy, we have no need for you. We'll have to go through a two-step process here. So first of all, we'll need to have a good description of the actual image that we would like to generate. Something that does fit with our NVIDIA quarterly report or whatever other article you chose. And then secondly, when we have this good description in textual format of the image that we want to generate, of course, then we can use the image generation AI to generate the actual image for us. So how do we get a description for an image that fits with the blog article that was automatically written for us? Well, we ask ChatTPT, of course. So continue on in the article generator here. I'm going to make some more space. And as we're going to call ChatTPT again, as usual, we'll start writing some instructions here. So let's start with instructions for ChatTPT to generate a description for an image for us. We have another one of those multi-line F strings here, and I'm simply telling it to read through the blog article and then come up with a prompt for an image that will be suitable for the content. I also ask it to not include any text in the image itself, as this sometimes ends up being weird warped fantasy letters that don't actually exist. Now here I also mentioned that the prompt is going to be fed into DALL-E 3, which is an image generation AI model by OpenAI. More on that in a bit. So this way it knows exactly what the prompt will be used for, which will give us a better output for the purpose, because ChatGPT knows exactly what we're asking for. We then simply provide the blog article variable, and this still contains our Markdown article. This hasn't changed in the meantime, so we can just feed this back to ChatGPT. And then we simply end it with image prompt here with the colon again, because we want ChatGPT to just give us the answer and nothing else, just go straight into the answer. Okay, now we have the instructions, so we simply need to call ChatGPT. Now you're kind of getting used to this by now, so this will make a lot more sense. I'll just paste this in here. We print a message here and we call ChatGPT in exactly the same way, but this time with the create image description instructions variable as the content of the message. We then extract the response in the same way like we did before. So this is all just the same code. And then I have this same check here just to see if it's not empty. It's exactly the same thing I did before. Of course, it's unlikely this will ever get triggered, but just to be safe, if we don't have a prompt, there's no point in continuing this code. Now, at this point, you don't have to test run this file, but the image generation prompt is going to contain something like this. Of course, I've run this many times, and actually this description is like twice as long as what it typically generates. So it's very long, it's extremely descriptive, but it will work very well for an AI image generator. So now that we have this kind of text, something like it, saved in image generation prompt, we know that we can move on to the last step, which is to actually generate an image. Now, for this last step, we're almost done. We're going to use, as I mentioned, OpenAI's DALL-E 3. Now, you don't have to open this website, but DALL-E 3 is, as you of course expect by now, an AI model that can generate images based on text prompts and has some pretty good stuff. Of course, we could also use any other image generation API, but the good thing about DALL-E 3 for this project is that it's also made by OpenAI. So we can use the ChatGPT key, which we've already saved in our .env file, to also call DALL-E 3. In fact, what's even more is we have this client object here, which comes from the OpenAI library, and we can use this to not only interact with ChatGPT, but also their other models, like in this case, DALL-E 3. So this will be very easy to implement. And I'm simply going to add the following here to call, that's not it, to call DALL-E and generate the image. So first, I'll just have a print statement, generating image with prompt, and we'll print the prompt here so that we can see exactly what's going on. And then here we have the actual request. You can see that this is fairly similar to using ChatGPT, except this time we call client.images.generate. We pass in the prompt we prepared, and then the model, in this case, it's DALL-E 3. Now the API has different options for the format in which you like to receive the image. I'm just going to stick with URL as it's very simple to work with. We're simply going to get a URL in response from the API, which links directly to our image. And this image will be hosted on the internet on OpenAI's server. So we can just follow the link and download the image. The size of the image that we want is 1024 by 1024 pixels, and n equals 1 simply means that we only want to generate one single image. So this DALL-E response variable will now contain an object with many properties we do not need, just like every time we called the ChatGPT API. So we got this kind of response. We always had to index into it because this response contains a lot of details that we're not terribly interested in for now. The same thing counts for this DALL-E response. It's going to have some other stuff that we don't necessarily care too much about for now. So I'm just going to index into it because what I need is the image URL itself. And this just happens to be located in the response.data key, which is a list again. We'll go to the first item, which is index 0. And then we need the URL where we can download our image. Again, don't worry about these exact keys and structure. This is just the structure OpenAI chose for their API responses. It doesn't really mean anything significant. We then prepare the location where we want to save our image by reusing the output folder variable. So if you remember earlier, we did all this stuff to get the particular output folder. So that's for that run, it was this one. Of course, if we run it again, it's going to create a new article. But we want to make sure that we save the image in the same folder. under the name image.png, because that will make sure that the Markdown image tag that we asked ChatTPT to insert earlier is going to find the image that will also be saved in the same folder, and our article will be done. Okay, so that's the path where we want to save our image. Of course, we only have a URL to our image and we don't actually have the image yet. So now we need to download the image and then save it. So I'll move here for the last code, and we just have an if-else statement that checks if there is an image URL. So if for some weird reason we didn't get a response from the API, which is generally very unlikely, then it's going to jump to this else block. But if there is an image URL, which really the vast majority of all cases, it's just going to run this code. So if it failed for some reason, it's going to print image generation failed, please try again. And if we have an image URL as is expected, then the first thing we need to do is download our image. Now, since we're going to get a URL, which is basically like www.google.com, we're going to make a request to this URL. In fact, we're going to make a GET request, which is basically the same as just visiting a web page in your browser, just opening a particular link. So this requests library that we've imported up top can make this GET request for us to the image URL, and then it will download the image response for us. Now we use the same with open trick again, this time on the image save location to make sure we're in the same output poll folder, but as image.png this time. Now we don't have W mode, but WB mode this time, write binary. This is because images are binary files and not text like we had before. And I'm just going to give it the name image file so I can refer to it in this blog as image file. Then we're going to call imagefile.write, and we're going to write the image response.content. So why this .content? When request library makes a request, again, it returns an object to us and it also has some other information, but that's not what we want to write to the file. And the actual content of what it received back when it made this request is in the content key. So that's why we take image response.content. Now finally, I have a print statement, image saved as, and then just reprint the location. And that's it. Go ahead and save this file. And now it's time for the big moment you've been waiting for. So I'm just going to delete this first article we generated because it's incomplete. It doesn't have an image. Save this, and I'm going to press the play button and let's see what happens. Reading, content read successfully, generating blog article. Okay, so far so good. Blog article generated, article saved, getting prompt for image generation. Okay, we have an image prompt for the image we want, and the image has been saved as well. So it looks like everything worked exactly as planned. Let's have a look. We have output here, and it has a very long folder name for the second folder. We have an article.md in there. Okay, we see an article here, an image is inserted. So let's look at the real article, the big moment. And I'm just going to drag it to the side to make it bigger. And here is our article. Pretty awesome. And our image has been inserted. Ooh, looking very futuristic. Now, my recording screen is a little bit small because I want you to also be able to watch this tutorial even if you're on like a phone or whatever. So it's a little bit hard to show here, but you can clearly see that this is a pretty awesome article. We have a neat little image here. Arm is kind of coming out of a suspicious place, but I guess we can clearly see it's his hip, so no weird thinking there, but it still seems a little bit off to me. But the server recs are pretty cool and awesome, I guess. So yeah, and a very good article. I'm actually going to run it again and let's see what we get, because the result is going to be different each time. This is like a non-deterministic thing. Okay, and I got an error. Interesting. The directory name is invalid, so there's a character in here. I suspect it might be the colon that is not allowed in folder names. So of course, sometimes these things happen when you're writing something. I'm glad this happens during the tutorial. So if we move over here in our code, we can just get rid of this project name here, and we can just have only the unique ID. So in this case, we'll just have the long code as the name. You can also do, this is a slightly different trick you could do. Project name is a string, so we can call replace, and we can replace any colons with nothing. So I'm just going to place an empty string. So the first thing is going to be replaced with the second thing. There may be other characters that are not allowed though, so it might be safer to just get rid of the project name altogether. Yeah, I'll actually just use the unique ID for here, and I guess we can comment out this line. We can sanitize the name, but I don't want to introduce too much complexity into this tutorial. So just use the name like this, and then you'll be fine. Let's see at my second try. Is this also a cool article? Okay, let's have a look. Looks pretty good to me. Oh, and we have another pretty awesome futuristic image. That looks suspiciously like a BMW. Pretty cool server recs though. And it looks like we have a good article as well. So that is pretty awesome. I'll just give it one more run just to make sure we have the worst of the bugs fixed here. And this is my third run. Let's see what we got this time. time. Okay, interesting. This time it inserted these little tilde markdown things. Now we don't need these, and if we remove this, it will work properly, and we just have to remove the one at the end here. Okay, so I'm just showing you a little bit of debugging here, and then if we look at the article, I have to reopen the preview for it to get updated with the changes I made. And now we have, this image is pretty awesome as well. So now we have another pretty awesome article here. So now I would go back to my article generator here, and I would take my blog article instructions, and I would simply add do not use tilde markdown code blocks in the article or anywhere in your response. I know that the response will be markdown, so you do not have to indicate that. Okay, so I would add that line, and then that makes our article generator even stronger, because next time it's not going to make this mistake anymore. So that's kind of how you work with these things. It's always the first iteration or even the third iteration of your script will never be perfect, but eventually, you have changes, more changes, and eventually you'll have caught all these little bugs and things. So kind of deliberately showing this here as well. Okay, I have another article, and let's look at this one. Okay, looking good. Oh, this image is awesome. I like this one. Just like a super mega computer with like a whole digital city here. That one is awesome. And the article looks very good as well. I keep seeing the same numbers pop up. Has all the important stuff, macroeconomic factors, regulatory environment. Okay, this looks very good. I think we have most of the baby bugs, I guess, resolved. And that's kind of the process. So there we go. We have an article generator now. Feel free to improve on it, add more features. But that is pretty awesome. We get detailed and engaging articles based on our source material. And of course, you can paste anything else in that content.txt file, and it's going to work just fine. Paste anything you want in here. It has good formatting on the articles, has an awesome image, so great job. Pat yourself on the back for making it all the way here and starting your journey into AI engineering. You've just literally automated the process of writing a blog article and generating an image to go with it, all in a matter of seconds on any topic. So if you enjoyed this mini course and want to learn more, we have many courses available in the Finxter Academy at academy.finxter.com. So if you go here, you can see we have loads of awesome stuff. Many of these have also been created by yours truly, and we go into much more depth into AI automation, Python, and many other related topics. So my hope is that this will not be the end, but rather the beginning of a new and exciting journey. As always, it was a pleasure and an honor to take this journey together with you. I hope to see you again in the future, and until then, happy coding.